Perhaps there was just no way to explain to my toddler son what I was renewing in Littleton after our move here from Kansas. We spent several mornings that first month having ice cream in the sell-for-less drugstore, twisting happily and lazily on the stools at the counter. But the ice cream wasn't the attraction for either of us, nor the antique cash register, nor even those marvelous spinning stools. I was finally not so out of place as I had once thought after a move across 600 miles of pure abstraction. I did not feel so helpless, so foreign as I had, learning to maneuver in a new area. I was not so lonely as I had been looking out a window on my lawnless street and not seeing anyone, any house, anything that was familiar. It was being in the drugstore that was filling the ache of what must be replaced for me. This familiarity I was finding in Littleton was, after all, the very foundation of my life. We really had come home.
Is there a Main Street in your life? It may not have been called Main Street. Maybe it was Union Boulevard, or First Avenue, or Elm Street. Whatever you called it, that was the place where things happened. It was the Friday night movie and window shopping. It was the voices of friends and the smell of fresh caramel rolls. It was the big parade every summer. Whatever happened to Main Street, in Littleton, Colorado, Main Street is still alive. In a moment, we will look at the history of this century-old street, the place where things happened. Why does Main Street seem so important in our memories of the past? Each of us has our own answer. But for evidence of what makes Main Street special, we don't have to look far. No farther away than downtown Littleton, Colorado, 4 blocks of history.
I think the house was built in 1900, and it was built from stone, as I remember, that came from Castle Rock. He had a big yard, lots of trees, not many flowers, but a big grassy area, and this was the place where the neighbors and even friends from some distance would come during over holidays, 4th of July and special occasions. And my father would string Japanese lanterns across the lawn. Well, I was born there in 1902. Now my recollections have to be based on what I remember from about 1906 until 1916.
Virginia Sanford Smith grew up in Littleton. She was the daughter of one of Littleton's earliest families. This corner was just a block away from her home. At the turn of the century, this corner looked different.
Well, we were allowed to go to the stores on Main Street when we were very young, because there was no traffic problem and there was no head for children to keep away from horses and teams in the street. But the rest time that I was allowed, and I had a brother a little bit older, and we were allowed to go from our house up north to the corner where the meat market was, the Cower and Kinkle meat market. And as I say, the floor was all covered with sawdust. And in front of the counter, there was a long counter. In front of the counter, the row of barrels. Hooks, that I suppose they'd call them. One was sauerkraut, and another was, I think, pickled herring, and another was cod. There were several barrels there. I believe pickles or something, but those that all made a smell. Families would come in to buy. They would come from the country and buy meat, and if there were any children, they always got a weenie, because hanging from the hook there, along with dressed chickens and some carcasses that he was ready to cut up, there were weenies just hung kind of in a cascade down there, and he'd take one off maybe to the kids. We never washed it, just stood there and
Actually, Littleton was here long before the Cower and Tinkle meat market. It dates back to the 1860s, soon after gold was discovered in Colorado. There was no Main Street in 1859. Littleton was born in a river valley on the high plains. Gold had been discovered along the tributaries of the South Platte River. In fact, one of the first strikes was made right here. This is the corner of East Bellevue Avenue and South University Boulevard. The gold rush brought the founder of Littleton here. But unlike these men who panned in Little Dry Creek, Richard Little was not looking for gold at all. He had been a railroad surveyor in the Midwest. He knew that mining and development would bring a demand for surveyors. And he knew also that for every man who struck it rich, 100 more would go home broke.
I've traveled all over this country, prospecting and digging for gold. I've tunneled, hydraulicked, and cradled, and I have been frequently sold. For each man who got rich by mining, perceiving that hundreds reward, I made up my mind to try farming, the only pursuit that was sure.